Welcome to the Aha Moment, our 14th episode, which is hard to believe that we're 14 episodes in already. I'm your host, Amanda Kochirka, and today I'm very excited to have with me my colleague, Dan Bolena. Dan is a DA team member. He works with us on a variety of different engagements, and today, though, specifically, we're going to be talking a little bit about peer groups.
Awesome.
So welcome, Dan. Great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one.
Thank you.
So leaders, we often hear leaders talking about how isolating their roles can be and how sometimes it feels a little bit like you're on an island. And so what we want to talk about today is the importance of facilitated peer groups specifically, because we have peer networking groups and peer-to-peer mentoring groups, but we want to talk a little bit about facilitated peer groups. We'll talk about what that means in a minute. But we want to talk about how that's a really crucial and important part of a leadership journey and gives leaders that sounding board, that place to go to talk about things that they're not sure about or challenges they may be experiencing,
Exactly.
all of the above. So that's what we're going to dive into today. So Dan, to start, you've worked with a lot of executives in your career. Could you just tell us a little bit about your background and your experience in this area?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I retired from the corporate world a few years ago, and part of my experience in that space was always some type of leadership role, and which I always brought coaching, mentoring. I've always embraced that, right? And I embraced it at a very young age. So kind of went off on my own. And then as I started to work with decision associates, really refining my craft around leadership development, executive coaching, team building.
Yep.
We've gone on and done some awesome engagements, and also peer advisory groups. So I spend a lot of time with senior leaders. They could be C-suite, they could be CEOs, but it's also important to note that love to work with emerging leaders that are struggling maybe to find their voice or be comfortable kind of being that senior role. So I just knew if I was a young person in that space, I would love to have someone like me.
Yeah.
So I am me to others that I feel that would benefit from like that.
Awesome. That's great. And so in working with all of these executives over the course of your career, what have you found as far as, when a leader doesn't have access to a group like this, what are some of the things that you start to see from those leaders who really are kind of operating on an island?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the things I look for in a leader to see if they're a good fit for a peer group is their mindset. So when the mindset specifically that I'm looking for that really do well in peer advisory groups is that of a growth mindset. We hear this fixed mindset, growth mindset. It's been around for a while, not a new concept. But one of the things that's evident is in the behavior of the executive and how they go about their day and how they grow. So one of the questions I like to ask leaders if they're interested is hey, tell me the last time you yourself, identified something you wanted to work on. And usually it's just silence. It's just silence. So one of the things that a common trait for leaders that are really good fits that on their own kind of realize it is they realize they don't have all the answers and there's room to grow. And so that in that peer advisor group is that place to grow with others. And we want people to embrace that. We don't want them to be afraid of it. It's a little weird at first.
Sure.
Like, why learn? I've done so much. But it's being vulnerable, and vulnerability at the executive level, right, is just tough.
It is.
And so that's something I look for just through conversations. So behaviorally, I'm looking to see, do their actions match their words? Yes, they're telling me they want to be in, but tell me what you're doing to actually help yourself. And like I said, sometimes the conversations just kind of stop pretty quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? It's just like,
yeah, going along and then
boom.
Slam the brakes.
Yep.
Why is it difficult, do you think, for leaders to find that agenda-free, if you will, consult or counsel inside their organizations? Why is it necessary for them to look outside the organization for that sounding board?
In my experience, what I think the most common trait that I see is bias. Inherently, anyone who works for you, with you, under you, even your board, has a certain bias.
Mhm.
And if you're truly looking for truly objective feedback that doesn't have a bias to it, leaders have access to that. Maybe like in their, say, an outside CPA, maybe an outside attorney. But that's only one or two people. And then if they've worked with those people over a long period of time, there's going to be some bias there too.
Sure.
So getting into a group where there's no pre-established relationships, you might have known of somebody, know of the company, but there's no incentive or disincentive for another member to either help you or not help you. They're there to help each other grow. So no one's come to the table with bias. So that's, even when you go home and you talk to someone in your family, there's a certain bias because you're part of the family. They don't want to hurt your feelings. They don't want to give you what I call the hurtful truth. So where can you go? Where can you go and get hurtful truths told to you in a way that's meant for you to grow, that there's no underlying bias? And that's one of the things that I think push executives to say, you know what, like, there's got to be somewhere else that I could be looking for something.
And that's actually a crucial element of the formula that this podcast is based on, which is, the element of blunt honesty, and having somebody who's willing to kind of hold that mirror up to you and have those open and honest conversations, knowing that they may be saying things that you don't agree with or that you don't like, but for the purpose of growth and development. Absolutely. So let's get some clarity around, because I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, there's a few different models for these, right? We've heard of, peer-to-peer mentoring. We've heard of peer-to-peer networking. We've heard facilitated groups. We've heard, peer advisory groups. So with the type of peer groups that we're talking about today, what's the differentiator? What are the elements that set this apart from other models?
Great question. So if we look at like what's common first, so what's common like in those groups would be, there's relationships that are built. You've got different businesses that where you're coming together. You could be having some conversations. The biggest difference between, say, it's a networking type organization and say peer advisor group is structure. Structure and selection. What I mean by that is the actual session that the sessions, the actual meetings are very structured, and they're structured in such a way that it flows to maximize time for those people in the room. All of the sessions that are done are 4 hours max, and within that 4 hours, because we're trying to make sure that we spend time well spent for those folks, is to give each member a chance to present topics, challenges, and the group has a structure of which they work through to actually uncover ideas and suggestions for opportunities or challenges that an executive's having that don't surface anywhere else. And the process is not proprietary, but the process that we use for issue processing, as an example, is so profoundly powerful that it takes a group to do it. And I would challenge anyone to try to do it with only, say, one or two other people, in that sense of like try to like issue process there. You'll hit on some attributes, but when you bring a team of 8 to 12 executives into a room with structure, man, it's hard to describe, but I say it's like magic. It truly is.
Really powerful.
People have, play on words here, it's just like these aha moments that the executive is like, just sometimes they're stunned at like, wow, I just, where did that come from? It could only have come from that group.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. It's one of my favorite things. Anytime we do any sort of, group training and development work, that's always one of the coolest things to witness is, as they're learning and growing together. And then over time, they start helping each other, process roadblocks and challenges and using what they've learned in the sessions.
Yeah.
And you just kind of step back as the facilitator and you're like, this is really cool.
It's like magic, right? It's like human magic, if it can even be such something like that. But
it is.
I agree.
It's one of my favorite things about this job, actually. So talk me through what types of leaders, what types of roles, if you will, to get a little more specific, are typically part of these types of groups. Are we talking just CEOs, owners, founders, or are there other individuals that would be part of
No,
this too?
it depends on the type of group. There are CEO groups. There could be CEO groups where we're strict on only having, you need to be a CEO to kind of be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, I would say that's that criteria. Then we open it up to size in industry.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, we would comprise, say, a CEO group with CEOs from different industries, ideally non-competitive in nature, in a sense of like you don't want to have a direct competitor, although it is possible,
Sure.
with some agreement between those people that they feel comfortable sharing some things, even though they're competitors.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, the willingness to be a part of a group, and you know, if that C-suite person feels comfortable enough to, you know, to relate to their peers. So CEO is one. C-suite is another. So you can have a mix of C-suite positions, whether CFO, CTO, leaders who ideally are looking to become a CEO, ideally. And then the third type of group is these emerging leaders. And it's boy, if I had a preference to only run one kind of group for like forever, give me the emerging leaders all day, because we can move. CEOs will blow up mountains, but emerging leaders will move mountains.
Yeah.
Like the energy, the ideas, the hunger that they have to learn. It's just there's magic in CEO groups and C-suite groups, but boy, the magic that's in an emerging leaders group is that's so amazing, right? So those three levels. Could you have a group where you combine those together? Yes, you could. You'd have to be careful with the stretch on, say, the emerging leaders, because they would feel, sometimes they don't feel so comfortable just even being around C-suite people. And you can also have even, say, groups within a company. So if there was a way, if there was a need to, say, within an organization to bring all the directors and senior directors together, or VP level, you know, these peer advisor groups don't just have to be made up of different industries and different companies. If there's a good enough need inside an organization, show them how to facilitate it, get them going, and you can have that same kind of magic within an organization too.
Absolutely. And so another thing we hear a lot about is, you know, industry specific peer groups. We hear a lot about those. And so I think there's merit to having a kind of mixed industry group. So would you speak to that a little bit?
You know, I can speak to it in the sense of like a practical example, to where I had brought some folks together to run a group last year, and had some resistance from a couple of people on the industries of the people that I was bringing into the group, because I had shared that. So they were hesitant and very skeptical. And I got to tell you, they walked away thinking, man, I had no idea that I could have, because the power in that kind of a group with different industries, it's not the industry as per se, because people are people. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. Their businesses are built. It's people. So no matter where you go, you have people involved. And every time you have people involved, similar issues, different businesses, what I call it, right?
Sure.
So if you're having an HR issue in the electrical industry, I guarantee you somebody in the insurance industry probably has some pretty similar issues, even though it manifests itself differently. So the fact that humans are the common denominator that's in that mix is what level sets it. But then what's amazing is to see these skeptics look at like someone in a different industry and say, man, and they actually, I saw it, they thanked this person who was from a marketing agency, thanked them for their experience in the marketing world, that they almost wanted to hire that person because of the questions they were asking and the suggestions they had. So you can really move the needle by being open to that experience. And the other thing I'll say is, where else can you go and have, most likely your peers are going to be, say, within your industry, and you go to a conference and they're within your industry. Maybe they're in different states, but they're not in a different industry. So man, to be able to get with people who are willing to share from a different industry, I call that gold.
Yeah, that broadening of perspective
Absolutely.
is incredibly valuable, because you don't know what you don't know, right? And so if you're bringing somebody in from another industry, they've got a totally different perspective, and that's just broadening the access to the view.
Yep. And my skeptics were like, they're coming back, right? I'm like,
Aha.
I'll say, well, now you know. So
Yeah.
it almost takes an experience. From maybe it sounds attractive on paper, but to actually truly be a part of a group like that and experience those aha moments, it really is. It's compelling.
Absolutely.
For sure.
So for those who are listening and thinking, okay, tell me more, I'm intrigued. What does a typical, I use that word lightly because the sessions, they're all different. They're different topics, different focus areas. But what does a quote unquote typical session of a peer group look like?
Yeah. So so there's an agenda. I put an agenda together. The structure of the group at a high level is 4 hours. We'll put a break in there. We open with basically what I do is a read of the group, and so everyone knows, like, once you come to the meetings a couple of times, there's a couple of ways that I have them come in with some initial preparation to make the initial assessment of where someone is for their mindset. And that basically is this: I have them rate on a scale of 1 to 10 where they're at professionally, where they're at personally, and one word that describes their mindset. And I put it up on the board, and I track these month in, month out. And everyone comes in, and if I see someone's an 8 and a 6 and a 7 and a 10, but if I see someone who's a 2 or a 3 in any one of those categories, I'll take some time and I'll do a check-in.
Yeah.
So as people go through divorces, someone has someone in a hospital, someone's business is not doing well. So you don't know what's going on, but the group comes in, and this is within the first 10 minutes. There's this kind of dynamics that we just quickly get into, and everyone can see where everyone else's mindset is and how everyone else is doing. So that's just kind of the initial part of it. We then get into really the crux of the meeting, and the goal is where we do issue processing. And issue processing is where we come in with a challenge and we express it as a how do I statement. And sometimes it's tough to come in with a how do I statement, so there's some coaching involved. How do I blank diddy blank, right? So I'll give a quick example of when someone came in with a how do I statement and how the group processed it. So we did this last year. A company up here in the area came in with a how do I enhance my company's culture? Pretty broad statement, right?
Yeah.
And so through the issue processing session, which there's structured questions that I provide, but there's also questions that you can ask, and I encourage people to ask open-ended questions. 20 minutes later, there's a chance for that person who came up with that challenge to rephrase or reframe that how do I statement.
I like that.
And it was reframed to, how do I manage a toxic employee in my operations department?
Aha.
If that CEO would have solved for equation number 1, which is how do I enhance my culture, my organization, would they have solved the issue of the right?
No.
So it was through the questions that we got to where we honed in on what was really the issue, right? And that CEO left that day, and he acted on it, and he made a change there. He had to have a conversation that he was not wanting to have. The group held him accountable, and we came back and we checked next time, and the group gave him some ideas and even how to hold that conversation with that person, and it swung the needle in the other way. It was that person came in the next time, the demeanor was way different.
Yeah.
So that issue processing, we try to get through 1 or 2, 4 hours to work with, 1 or 2 or 3 issues that we process for the group, right? Then we get into a scenario where sometimes there could be some outside speakers coming in, or some topics. There could be some leadership topics that say I'm talking about. We do use assessments as a part of kind of the foundation of the group, so we can even bring in some topics that are related to improvement as a leader, because we're always looking to try and sharpen the knife, so to speak. But
Sure.
yeah, so that's the core essence. In those 4 hours, when we get into issue processing, it flies by, right? Because you're asking you had 8 or 10 people asking questions, and 20 minutes goes by really quickly.
Absolutely.
So, but that's I would say that's the general framework of and that's that structure. That's that the group, the cadence that we build. as you start to present topics and challenges, and as you hear other people's questions, last thing I'll say is one of the things I've noticed with executives, they have a hard time asking open-ended questions.
Yeah.
Right? Have you talked to your attorney about this? Right. No. How about what other resources should you consider for consideration of what other ideas you might be able to get? Right. It's hard to get. It's a mindset. So, but after a few of those, I've had CEOs tell me they now approach their one-on-one conversations way different because now they're asking open-ended questions by habit because of what they picked up in the peer advisory group, where they, as opposed to how they were running their one-on-ones in the past. So it's impacted even those connections kind of outside the peer advisory group in ways that, like, how do you measure that?
Absolutely. So speaking to, the format, which I love, I think that structure is great, helps keep the conversation focused and making sure that everybody's walking away from every single session with some actionable tools, things that they can apply immediately. So let's talk a little bit about success stories that you've seen. So what are some of the things that you've seen come out of, the leaders' participation in these peer groups?
The one example with the, how do I enhance the culture of my organization was one big success. Another scenario would be around vulnerability. So I had a meeting and, everyone thinks they're vulnerable and, or you think you're not afraid to be vulnerable. But in this one particular meeting, there were some questions that were asked and you hit either a good question or you hit an area where someone's hesitant to answer. When you ask the question, there's silence.
Yeah.
Right. And I tell my just don't say anything. Let the person you asked the question process it. Right. And we had a scenario go on just like that. And there were some questions. There were some leadership issues that were on the table. This one particular leader was having a hard time connecting to people. And through the conversation, we had gotten that particular leader to be more vulnerable. And he literally, like, you can see the stress in his face. Just, it's hard to describe. He just was like, I think I'm afraid to connect to my people. I'm afraid to be me. And he had to be himself in front of us. And so that was a start, right? So you hit those weird times. And again, how do you, when you're talking about these types of groups, unless you experience something like it, it's hard to explain, hey, we have people help to be vulnerable. And people say, oh, that's great. I do it all the time. Like, well, you might think you are, but there might be another level or layer or two that you're leaving on the table that can help you connect with your people. And if you connected and they were more engaged, what would that mean for productivity? Like, you think of the goodness. And if you connect with them and then they connect with each other, there's a rippling effect.
Absolutely.
So as leaders set that bar. So I've always believed, and I've seen it, the level of vulnerability a leader brings to the table every day is the level of vulnerability their people will be willing to go to.
1,000%. Yes. Right? And that's something we talk about it a lot in peer groups. We talk about it in training sessions. Vulnerability is one of the most crucial leadership skills. And it's one of the hardest for people to develop a level of comfort with, is that, you have to model that vulnerability. If you're expecting that from your team, you have to model the behavior as well. You can't just expect it, but not model it yourself, which I think a lot of leaders do. Be honest with me. Well, you're set that model yourself. So it's completely vital.
It's contagious.
Yes.
But if it's contagious on the other side too.
It is.
It's contagiously, if you're not vulnerable, guess what? Good chance that your people won't be as vulnerable, and so the connections will be more superficial.
Yes.
Superficial connections.
Superficial connections, lack of honesty, and we see that with the culture assessment survey, that service that we offer, where you've created a culture where vulnerability isn't valued and isn't modeled, and then you're getting feedback that's not authentic, and that makes it 10 times harder to get to the root cause of things, right?
Yes. And last thing I'll say is I've had executives say they don't have time to be vulnerable.
Aha.
And I'm like,
Interesting.
I'm like, okay, so, and why are we talking
Yeah.
about this conversation? So, yeah, so it's tough to get them to realize the power without actually having them experience a shift in their vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Like truly put yourself out there and be open to questions and be honest in your answers.
Yes.
Don't just give us the news article answer
Yeah,
on
right.
what you want us to think is going on, right?
Yeah.
So
If they're looking for some sort of peer advisory group to participate in, what are the kind of key elements that they should be looking for in a really well facilitated peer advisory group?
no, that's a great question. So what I would say is there structure to the group that you're looking at?
Mm-hmm.
What type of structure? The facilitator, what's the experience of the facilitator? Do they have any training or certifications kind of in that space,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's a lot of work out there. There's a lot of really great places for facilitators, as an example, to really become to be able to move the needles kind of in those conversations,
Mm-hmm.
right? Types of other members that are in the group, right? So what types of members are in the group? How long has the group been together? And the last thing I'll say is that if there's nothing else that you look for in a group, it's going to be, what do you feel the underlying mindset of the group is?
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is, what kind of feeling do you pick up on from the other members? Are they growth oriented? Are they there to help each other? Are they welcoming to you? Do you feel they're authentic to you when you first meet them, and do they
Mm-hmm.
welcome you in? Do you feel that they're welcoming and warming, kind of in that sense, versus something being mechanical?
Mm-hmm.
We can get up, we can talk about groups, and it's mechanical. You come in, you talk about a few things, and you leave, and it's like going to get your oil changed in your car. It's like, it's great, right? But you came in to get a paint job.
Yeah.
But you got your oil changed. I guess you got your car worked on. So, the last thing I'll say is, as a leader, that if you're thinking about something, is ask yourself, what would this help me solve? And be honest with yourself and asking yourself that question. And are you willing? Ask yourself, am I willing to put myself in a group, maybe reveal some things about me and be vulnerable?
Mm-hmm.
And with the idea of moving the needle, and then moving the needle, what does that mean to me?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where do I need some help?
Yep.
If you're willing to do that, a willingness to embrace that type of environment, and you'll feel the connection. That's where the ingredients for the magic can happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about vulnerability as one thing that group participants should bring to the table and expect from their fellow participants. What are some of the other things, characteristics, approaches, mindsets that participants should bring as they go into a peer group, and or should they expect from their fellow group participants?
I would say another really big one is, you hear about being authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Is authenticity.
Yeah.
So when I ask you what your numbers are, give me on a scale of 1 to 10, rate me on professional and personal, and give me your one word for describing your mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for you to be honest with me.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to feel comfortable with the group to put your bad numbers up there. And the reason I say this is so important is, when I first start running the group, no one knows everyone. The numbers are always really high.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an 8, I'm a 9, I'm a 10.
Yeah.
Well, that person's a 9, I'm a 9.5, right?
Yeah.
And then as the group gets to know one another, what do you think happens to the numbers?
Yeah, they become more honest.
Yeah, like, you know what? Yeah, my daughter's really sick. I'm really stressed out right now, and I'm supposed to go on vacation. I'm not going on vacation. I'm about a 3, personally,
Mm-hmm.
and being okay making it a 3.
Yeah.
So it's being authentic,
Mm-hmm.
and really, because that's how we can help.
Absolutely.
If you come in as you're a 10 and you're a 10 and your mindset's, you're loving life. Okay, great. Like, I'm not sure how to help. So, be willing to be authentic. The third probably area I would have you really focus on is self-awareness.
Mm.
So when we start asking you questions like this, if you haven't asked yourself those questions in a long time, like, hey, give me one word that describes your mindset. At first, you'll stumble with it. But then as you start going to the meetings and you'll start, this is what I'm going to be asked, you'll start down into where you are. And so that self-awareness will bleed into, you'll be more authentic with others. I believe you'll coach, you'll lead better. The other thing what happens to us too is you'll now in your one-on-ones, as you develop more self-awareness on what you've got going on, I've seen leaders then be more comfortable asking their subordinates or whoever works for them, implement something similar. Hey, when you first come in, I want to know where you're at. Give me the. They want to understand where they are emotionally, not just hey, you went to the Steeler game.
Yeah.
But how you feeling about geez, your mom's going into surgery. Talk to me about that, right? Because there's always, we like to disguise our lives to being just like Facebook lives, and we're not always just as happy as we appear to be. So be willing as a leader to give your people space to share those things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I think, highlights the importance of recognizing that we're all humans, we're all whole people, we're not just who we are at work. And the really effective leaders are the ones who recognize and acknowledge that about their team members, model the vulnerability themselves, create the space for their team members to bring their full selves to work, because no matter how good we think or say we are about compartmentalizing our life, nobody's really actually that good at it. So there's always somewhere it's going to leak through. And if something's going on at home that's, causing stress or frustration or sadness, that's going to bleed in at some point, to the work that you're doing. And so if you've got the space to be open and honest about how you're feeling, and you've got a leader who's supportive of that and models that behavior themselves, that creates such a strong culture for the organization and creates a team that is, willing to go the extra mile, to, be really hyper focused when they are at work and be productive. And it just creates a stronger, more cohesive team.
Couldn't agree more. Well said. And yes, goodness begets goodness.
Yes. I like that concise version. So let's recap a little bit. So we established that leadership shouldn't be lonely, right? Leadership is something that just because you may feel like you're on an island, there's an opportunity for you through these peer advisory groups to seek that sounding board, to seek that group of people that you can go to, for advice, for counsel, for bouncing ideas off of, for brainstorming, all of the above. And if we've gone through all of this, and if there's somebody listening to the podcast today who is still on the fence, still a little skeptical, what are you going to say to them?
I would have them ask themselves the question of, who is in my circle that I can trust and count on? Just ask yourself that question first. And just take some notes. It's like asking what's in my refrigerator. If you want to see what my eating habits are, you just kind of go through that. So who is in your circle? And then the next question would be, who else might add value to me that I haven't considered before? Right? So we live our lives in such a way that our everyday outcomes are a product of our decisions and our actions. So if our outcomes aren't what we desire, then what part of the equation can we change or enhance to kind of like make the outcome different? I would challenge everyone to think about, I would say, look at your circle and look at who is guiding you. And by making a change, even one small change there, can make a profound impact on not just you as a leader. You as a leader are like, if we throw you into a pond, there's a rippling effect. It's your people. It's the shareholders. It's your employees' families. I mean, think of the people you can impact by being a better leader. And I'm not just advocating just for, say, peer advisor groups. But boy, the group gives you such a golden opportunity to make a change to yourself and then to your team, right?
Yes.
So who's in your circle? Who is in my circle, and who might I want to consider to be added to my circle is where I would have them think. And then if it's, hey, maybe I should check this out. Hey, come on in. We'll walk you through this, and you may or may not like it, and it may not be a fit. But this is a great place to start. Is just kind of asking, who's in my circle.
That's great. I really like that. That self-reflection is super important. And I think just a good exercise, even if you're already sold on the peer group concept, I think that reflection is really important to understand who you have. I think then that this is like a whole separate topic, whole separate episode, but the concept of the loss of third places, we've got work, we've got home, and those third places are really,
yes. Yep. I like
not something that is part of our lives anymore. And a lot of the connection and value that we can get from those connections that gives us different perspective was coming from those third places. And so if you don't have that, you really can find yourself in a position where, you're looking with tunnel vision and you're not growing, you're not seeing the success that you could be if you sought outside perspective.
Last thing I'll say is, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
I love it.
So
that's great advice.
Right? It's like I would ask yourself, what room are you in?
Yes. So. Are you in the right room or not?
Right.
Have that self-reflection for sure. Well, so much great input and advice today, Dan. Thank you so much.
No, yeah, you're welcome.
And so this is wrapping episode 14, almost to episode 15. Again, crazy to believe that here we are.
No, it's great. This is awesome. Thank you. This has been, I've enjoyed all these episodes, and hoping some people have some, hate to say it, some aha moments.
Yes. No, it's fine. We say it all the time. So thank you for joining us, to all of our listeners, for episode 14 of the Aha Moment. Again, thank you so much to our guest, Dan Bolena, who is a DAT member. We're super lucky to have him on board here, helping with all of our development and training services.
Yeah.
And so thank you, Dan.
No, you're welcome.
So again, thank you to all of our listeners. And as always, please subscribe on Spotify to this podcast to make sure that you are notified of all new episodes as they drop every other week. You can also find more information about us, Decision Associates, online. Our website is decisionassociates.net. We are also on LinkedIn as Decision Associates. This has been the Aha Moment. Thanks so much for listening.